Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Charts with Dan. We are on Monday this week because I'm on the road today, which means we're using the estimates, but the estimated numbers don't really matter this week because the outcome was never in doubt. And this is one of those weekends that makes it really fun for me as a huge nerd to be a box office guy, because there are weekends sometimes where you see like lightning in a bottle. You see something happen that maybe you've never seen happen before, that happens once every 5 or 10 years. This weekend, two of those things happened, and really even more if you talk about what happened with Star Wars, if you talk about the generational shift that's going on at the box office. There is so much to talk about, a lot of exciting stuff to talk about, so let's get right into it. At number one, as many people predicted, was Backrooms, but this was not the number that a lot of people predicted. $81.4 million. And if that number goes up when the final numbers come in, that will eclipse the opening of Star Wars, The Mandalorian, and Grogu. It's only about $200,000 behind it right now. I think a lot of people called that Backrooms was going to do well. I wasn't one of them. I'll own up to that. That was a generational blind spot for me. But I don't know how many people would have predicted that it would challenge the opening of a Star Wars movie, an indie A24 horror film. This is just an absolutely bananas result, and it's because it tapped into something that means a lot to Gen Z and means a lot to Gen Alpha. I talked about it in my review for the film. There's a lot of talk about how the younger generations don't want to be around people. They only want to watch stuff on their screens. Well, they were watching stuff on the big screens this week, and maybe it has a little bit more to do with the fact that studios weren't making a whole lot of things they were interested in going out to see. They were very interested in seeing Backrooms, and there's so much more to talk about with it, which we will in just a few minutes. In second place was another indie horror film, another indie horror sensation, Obsession, which in its third weekend posted another increase in business. Right now, 10%. I've seen some revised estimates, unofficial, that it could be closer to 14 or 15%. It made $26.4 million. It's over $100 million domestically. And the great thing about this movie and its performance, and there are a lot, and we're going to dive deeper into it as well in a few minutes, is that Obsession and Backrooms are two totally different kinds of box office phenomena. Backrooms is absolutely tapping into the zeitgeist and the liminal spaces thing and the YouTube shorts and all of that. Obsession is 100% a word of mouth hit, the likes of which we rarely see. There are literally a handful of movies that have done what Obsession has done. So what we've seen in the heart of the summer movie season, when competition is at its most fierce, are two indie summer hits that are outdrawing big studio films and are succeeding in two completely different ways, but both of which are largely skewing to young people, which is the audience that the big studios have been trying to capture, but that these little horror movies have been able to. It's such an exciting time. I'm excited by this. It's exciting to see. In third place was Star Wars, The Mandalorian, and Grogu, which dropped an estimated 69.4% in its second weekend to bring in $25 million. Not only did it not stay in first place, it fell to third place. Its domestic total is now at $137.3 million. On last week's charts, and again on my live show last week, I talked about the kind of curious spin that I thought the entertainment media was putting on The Mandalorian and Grogu, and I got some pushback to my pushback saying, what is it with you in this movie? It seems like you have a personal vendetta against it. Maybe you just want to be proven right when you thought that it wasn't going to do very well this summer. That wasn't it at all. The main reason that I brought it up last week, and I think we're seeing it being borne out this week, is that there was so much of the spin about this film that it was skewing to families, that it was set up for a long run at the box office, that I just didn't see in the evidence and the demographics and everything from the opening last weekend. So I felt like there was a story, a very rosy picture being told about this movie's future at the box office that wasn't supported by the evidence that was being cited. That's what I was pushing back against, and I think that that's what we saw. It did not hold like a family film. It didn't even hold like a standard Star Wars film or a standard summer blockbuster, almost 70%. I don't necessarily think, again, if you're saying it was a family movie, which was the line, it's a family film, then the competition wasn't really from Backrooms or Obsession, or shouldn't have been, unless it was actually skewing a little bit older. It was skewing to my generation. In this box office showdown, Star Wars, the franchise of my generation and the generations above me, lost to the new generation, which I'm not saying is a bad thing, but that's why I pushed back so heavily last week against the narratives in the trades, is I just didn't think it was setting an optimistic expectation or drawing the right conclusions. And this was not a good week for The Mandalorian and Grogu. And an almost 70% drop, that's not great. The only saving grace for that movie is that it had a lower budget than the other Star Wars films. But depending on how it does from here on out, even that might not help to save it at the box office. And as we go forward, I'm going to try to do some profitability breakdowns and see just how it's doing. But really great news for indie horror, not great news for Star Wars at the box office. One last kind of insult to injury here for Mandalorian and Grogu, which is that this is the first time since week-to-week records have been kept that a Star Wars movie has opened at number one and failed to stay number one for 2 weeks or more. In fourth place was a movie that doesn't have to worry about any of that stuff, Michael. It dropped 43.3% in its sixth week of release. It brought in $11.7 million. It's approaching $350 million domestically. In fifth place is Nate Bargatze's The Breadwinner, which brought in $7.5 million. That's an all right result for that film. It's not a breakout hit. It's not a huge disappointment. I think it's, it did okay. In sixth place was The Devil Wears Prada 2, which brought in $5.9 million. It's now over $200 million domestically. Pressure opened in seventh place, the World War II historical drama, with $5.75 million. The Sheep Detectives continuing to hold well. It dropped less than 50%, just under 50%, to bring in $4.6 million. It's now made over $50 million domestically. Passenger is the horror movie left out in the cold. It just has not been able to survive in the shadow of Backrooms and Obsession. It dropped 70% in its second weekend for another $2.6 million. It's at $15.2 million. All of the horror hype right now is being sucked up by the top two films at the box office. And Mortal Kombat 2 is on its way out of the top 10. It dropped another 67.1%, brought in $2 million. Its domestic total is now at $77.7 million, but it will not be hanging around for much longer. Dropping out of the top 10, at least right now, I have Project Hail Mary after 10 weeks. What an impressive box office run in the top 10. The Super Mario Galaxy movie, also another spring hit coming out after 8 weeks, and Boots Riley's I Love Boosters. It's tough to launch a movie like this in the middle of the summer. It's out after 1 week. Project Hail Mary actually did not have any box office data reported as of the time I did the show, so I don't know if Amazon MGM have stopped reporting box office numbers or if they're just late, but as of right now, it is out of the top 10. As far as the biggest theater count changes from this past weekend, Mortal Kombat 2 lost a little under half of its theaters. It lost over 1,100 theaters. It's still in about 1,600. The Super Mario Galaxy movie lost 672 theaters. It's in about 1,300. The Devil Wears Prada 2 lost a chunk of theaters. It lost 650. It's still in 2,650. I Love Boosters, without those studio contractual commitments locked in, lost 450 theaters. It's still in 1,300. And Tuner had an expansion to 448 theaters. It was actually, according to a lot of the reports, in 11th place for the weekend. It's now in a total of 452. This is the 2026 box office versus the 2025 box office, and this is why I say I think we're positioned well for June. If you look at last week's box office, 2025 is in red. You can see that Memorial Day, which was a record breaker last week, was way above the 2026 weekend. But our box office this weekend was 20% ahead of what we saw in the post-Memorial Day weekend last year, and that's why I think we're well positioned for June, because yes, Lilo and Stitch launched big, and Mission Impossible opened the same weekend, but the June weekends were a lot more reserved, and with a lot of movies opening up and the continued performance of what we have, I think that we are perhaps on pace to absolutely blow away last year's June box office. We're already plus 20% for the last weekend in May. We'll see what we do in the next several weeks going forward. All right, let's take a look at some of the movies individually in the top 10. And of course, we have to start with Backrooms. As far as the biggest opening weekends of the year domestically, right now, according to estimates, it is at number 4 at $81.4 million. About $1.5 million ahead of Project Hail Mary. It's less than $200,000 behind Star Wars, The Mandalorian, and Grogu. So if A24 made basically a rounding error in their estimated number for the film, then it could jump over Mandalorian and Grogu and be the third highest opening film of the year domestically. And again, this is a movie that was in around the $10 million budget range, way lower than any other film on this list. So the fact that it's opened where it has is even more impressive. Over the past year and a half or so here on the show, we've been talking about the fact that A24 is really stringing together a lot of hits and they have strung together what's going to be their biggest hit yet. Because when you look at the biggest opening weekends in A24 history, Backrooms set the studio record by about $56 million. No big deal. The previous biggest opening in A24 history domestically was Civil War, which opened at $25.7 million. Backrooms opened to $81.4 million. So easily the highest opening film in studio history. But this is crazy. It's also already the second highest grossing release, period, domestically in A24 history. It's only about $15 million behind Marty Supreme. It's going to pass that probably tomorrow or maybe even Wednesday, which means that it will become the first A24 film to gross over $100 million domestically. And when you look at this top 10, Marty Supreme, The Drama, Backrooms, Materialists, 4 of these top 10 movies were all released within the last year or so. So A24 is really finding some traction at the box office, which we will see when I look at the market share for this year. That's coming up later in the show. Backrooms also put up the 4th highest opening gross for a horror film ever, at $81.4 million, ahead of Five Nights at Freddy's back in 2023. It opened behind only The Conjuring Last Rites, It Chapter 2, and It. And again, a way lower budget than just about any other movie on this chart. When you adjust for inflation, Backrooms had the 9th best opening ever for a horror film, just ahead of Interview with the Vampire back in 1994, behind The Conjuring, Five Nights at Freddy's, and Us. So a top 10 opening in the genre, whether you do or don't adjust for inflation. Now, on the show, I take a lot of pride in doing my own research and compiling and trying to come up with fun, cool charts for you. But sometimes somebody will outchart me in the wild. And that's what I found when I was preparing the show today. And the information was so interesting, I had to bring it to you here on the show. So I did not do the research for this particular chart. I did fact check the dates and stuff that are included, but I have to give a shout out to a user on Reddit. I look at several different resources when I'm looking at news articles and trying to find stuff for box office. There is a Redditor named Sanderso47 who did this amazing amount of research. I envy the amount of time to be able to do this research, to look at movies that were number 1 domestically and which movies had the youngest directors. And according to this research, this is really since box office data began consistently getting collected back in the 70s, Kane Parsons is the youngest director ever, again, since we have reliable box office tracking, to have a movie at number 1 at the box office. This is opening weekend or otherwise. He's 20 years old. He beats a record that's been held since the 90s. John Singleton, he beat it by 5 years. John Singleton had Poetic Justice, which was the number 1 film, when he was 25 years old. Then we have Robert Rodriguez at 27 with From Dusk Till Dawn, Legally Blonde and its director, Robert Lukatich, who were 27, Chronicle and Josh Trank, who were 27. And by the way, if they are the same age, then it's whoever was the fewest days old. That's the tiebreaker there. Then we have kind of the 28 club. John Landis was 28 when he directed Animal House. Steven Spielberg was 28 when he directed Jaws. Eddie Murphy was 28 when he directed Harlem Nights. Chuck Russell, 28 when he directed A Nightmare on Elm Street 3. And Henry Joost, 28 when he directed Paranormal Activity 3. Again, these aren't necessarily first films, but these are movies that were number 1 at the domestic box office. And think about how young everybody thought these directors were. I mean, Steven Spielberg was the boy genius at 28. Kane Parsons just took number 1 at 20, 8 years earlier. That is incredibly impressive. Literally a filmmaker of his generation. And that's been a lot of the narrative around Backrooms, and it should be. The fact that it connected so much with the generation. Some of the demographics I read were 88%, I think, of the audience was under 35 years old. That is a massive number. I can't think of another movie, except for maybe Obsession, that was able to turn out audience members that young. And it just goes to show that if you make things that audiences are passionate about, they will show up to see it. And there have been so many different studios that have tried to cynically attract Gen Z and Gen Alpha by using older filmmakers and older writers to say, you kids like this, right? And they can sniff that out a mile away. This is someone of their generation making a movie for their generation about a phenomenon that appealed primarily to their generation. And it's worked at the box office. So I think that, when we look at the transitioning of movies and filmmakers between generations, this weekend is going to be seen as a turning point when Star Wars lost to this generation of filmmakers. And I think it's very exciting. We've got so much more to get to this episode, but before we do, I want to thank this week's sponsor. This video is brought to you by Factor. Schools are getting out, the weather's getting hot, the days are getting longer. It's that time of year when your schedule fills up with tons of things to do, and when there's less time than ever to worry about prepping and cooking a delicious full meal. But there's good news. Factor is here to keep you fed and enjoying the summer sun. Factor delivers fresh, never frozen meals right to your door that are ready to eat in just 2 minutes. They do the shopping, the prepping, the cooking. All you have to worry about is the eating. And this time of year when people are more focused on their health goals than ever, Factor has meals built around them, whether it's weight loss, more protein, GLP-1 support, or like me, just not eating as much bad stuff. And even if you're not able to travel this summer, Factor delivers globally inspired meals from around the world, including Mediterranean and Asian meals, so you can bring international eating right to your door. Factor also has a rotating weekly menu of over 100 meals every week, so you'll never get stuck in a rut. Next week's menu includes a barbecue bacon burger with white cheddar mac and cheese, which to me practically screams summer eating. Head to factormeals.com/Murrell50off and use code Murrell50off to get 50% off and free daily greens per box with new subscription only while supplies last until 9/27/2026. See the website for more details. That's factormeals.com/Murrell50off, code Murrell50off. I don't want Obsession to get too lost in the shuffle here. First of all, for Focus Features, who acquired the film out of Toronto, it's their third highest grossing film of all time domestically. Now, Focus has kind of a weird history, so there are a lot of different movies that are listed at number one. I ended up putting 50 Shades of Grey at number one because they did produce the film. The Focus title card appears at the beginning of the movie. So it's at 166.1 million. Coraline in second place at 116.8 million. And then Obsession, right now, the third highest grossing Focus film of all time, ahead of Downton Abbey and Nosferatu. And at this rate, I think it could easily grab the number one spot. And again, off of a budget of around $1 million, which is even crazier in a different way than what we're seeing with Backrooms. But this one is the crazy stat for me. So we talked about the fact that Obsession opened in third place. Last weekend, it had an increase in business in its second weekend of wide release. And I mentioned on the show that there have only been about 20 movies in the summer movie season, wide releases, that have increased business in weekend number two. And then this past weekend, we saw it increase business again. And it's even rarer for a movie to have increased business in weekend two and weekend three. How rare? According to my research, since the early 1980s, when week-to-week statistics were really consistently kept, there have only been 5 movies that were released in 1,000 theaters or more, saw an increase in business in weekend two, and another increase in business in weekend number 3. Not 5 movies in the last decade or this century, 5 movies in the last 40 plus years of movies. And those movies are E.T. the Extraterrestrial back in 1982, Crocodile Dundee back in 1986, Scream back in 1996. This is kind of the odd movie out, but it's true. Anyone But You, the Sydney Sweeney Glenn Powell movie from 2023, it was in that holiday release window and it had increases in business in weekend 2 and 3, and Obsession. That's the list. That's it. Not during the summer, period, with increases in weekend 2 and weekend 3. That is pretty elite company to be in. Again, when you look at the narrative behind that film, it's not a studio film, a really small indie horror film that was acquired out of a festival, and it's duking it out and doing the same sort of performances that we saw from E.T. back in 1982. That is absolute insanity. I could do this show for another 10 years. I mean, if you take out Anyone But You, it's been 30 years between Scream and Obsession. So 2 movies in 30 years have done what Obsession is doing. I could be sitting here at 70 plus years old before this happens again. Absolute insanity with what we're seeing with Obsession. And the top 2 movies are getting the sort of heat that we used to see from Star Wars. But The Mandalorian and Grogu is and also ran at the box office, both internationally and domestically. So let's see where it stands among the other films set in a galaxy far, far away. This is the Star Wars franchise tracker. Now, I heard you last week about the design of this, so I tried to redesign it, make it a little bit easier to read. Let me know what you think. These are the Star Wars films released in theaters domestically through 2 weekends. So it doesn't really matter what day of the week they were released on initially. This is through 2 full weekends of release. And right now, The Mandalorian and Grogu is number 9 out of 13. Now, we don't have data available for The Empire Strikes Back or Star Wars, but I'm confident that's where they would be placed anyway. And these are not adjusted for inflation numbers. If they were, Mandalorian and Grogu would be way further behind and at least one slot lower. It's at $137.3 million. That's $11 million behind Solo, a Star Wars story, and far behind all of the prequels, all of the new trilogy films, and Rogue One, a Star Wars story. And again, if you adjusted for inflation, it would be behind Return of the Jedi, way behind. So really, the only movie that Mandalorian and Grogu has bragging rights over is The Clone Wars, which, maybe Rod of the Hutt is a bad luck at the box office. I don't know, but it is not an elite company, even falling behind Solo, a Star Wars story. Again, the only saving grace is the fact that it costs less than most of those movies. And that actually takes us to the results of our member poll. Last week, as The Mandalorian and Grogu was kind of getting spun for a big box office performance going into weekend number 2, and as Backrooms was getting ready to be released, I asked the members here on the channel, do you think that The Mandalorian and Grogu will lose the number 1 spot at the box office to Backrooms? And this was a very, very close poll, and the members actually were not able to predict this one correctly. 49% said yes, and 51% said no, it would not. At least that's what 51% of members said on Thursday night. And it's where I want to take a little time to address something. And before I get into it, I just want to say I'm not mad. I'm just a little disappointed. You see, when I have prediction numbers for the member poll, I always look at the results on Thursday night before the preview numbers come in, so that the poll is not influenced by the preview numbers that come in for a film that could swing the poll one way or another. But I noticed something curious. When I had checked the poll earlier in the week, it was much closer to like 55-45. When I checked it on Thursday night, it was about 49% yes, 51% no. Right now, the poll stands at about 52% yes, it will lose the number 1 spot, and 48% no, it's not, which means that I have members here on the channel that either changed their votes or waited to see what was going to happen and voted after the fact. And listen, I don't put rules on the member polls. I don't put anything hard and fast, but I have complimented all of you on your ability to predict the box office, to be prognosticators of what's going on. And then I catch you juicing the poll. You're using the insider information to go in and try to say, oh, look, Dan, we predicted that one too. But you didn't, because I was born at night, but not last night. I checked the results of that poll for this exact reason, and I'm frankly a little disappointed that some of you decided to try to pull one over on me, to try to get that credit for being a box office predictor when, quite frankly, it would not have been an earned victory. So that's why I say I'm not angry. I'm just a little bit disappointed. I know it wasn't all of you. It was probably just a few of you, a few bad apples in the bunch, if you will. But, that's just the way the cookie crumbles. And that brings us to our member poll question for this week. I just want you to take some time to think about what you've done. That's it. All right, let's zip through the rest of the top 10 really quickly. Michael is moving up the list of all-time domestic grossers for its studio Lionsgate. It has now passed The Hunger Games: Mockingjay Part 1 to become the 3rd highest grossing film in studio history. If it can make it to $410 million, it'll pass The Hunger Games. We'll see how much gas is left in the tank. I don't think it's going to get there, but it's been an incredibly impressive run. It has now also passed the box office gross of Oppenheimer at number 4, and it's very close to passing Project Hail Mary on the list of the highest grossing non-sequels of the 2020s. And at this rate, I think Obsession could very well make this list as well, which would put 3 2026 releases on this chart. It's been a very impressive year for non-sequels at the box office. I think maybe audiences are just looking for something kind of new, kind of fresh. Meryl Streep continues to add to her resume as far as her highest grossing films of all time domestically, adjusted for inflation. The Devil Wears Prada 2 has now officially passed The Devil Wears Prada on the inflation-adjusted list, which means it's outgrossed it as far as raw dollars and inflation-adjusted dollars. And if it makes another $10 million, it'll pass a series of unfortunate events for number 6 on this list. This weekend, we have 2 major new releases that are hitting theaters. One of them is Masters of the Universe. That's why I'm on the road today. You'll have my review for that tomorrow morning when the embargo is lifted. And the other one is Scary Movie. It's not called Scary Movie 6. I think they're trying to do the Scream thing, so it's just called Scary Movie. It's been almost 26 years since the first Scary Movie opened, and that brings us to our Charts with Dan trivia question for today. The original Scary Movie opened on July 7th of the year 2000 and dethroned two summer blockbusters. One of the movies was number 1, the other movie was number 2. One of them starred George Clooney, and the other one starred Mel Gibson. What were those two blockbusters? If you were alive in 2000, this might be a little bit easier. If you weren't, it may be a little bit tougher. So think back to the summer of 2000, two big movies that were at the top of the box office that were dethroned by Scary Movie. I'll give you another second to think. Pause if you don't want to know the answer, because here they come. The answers are The Perfect Storm and The Patriot. They were at number 1 and 2 over the holiday weekend or leading into the July 4th weekend, and they both got bumped down the charts by the original Scary Movie. We'll see if it can dethrone Backrooms to become the number 1 movie again this upcoming weekend. So that's what's going on at the domestic box office. Let's take a look now outside of the US and Canada and look at the top 5 films internationally. And Backrooms was also winning over the world because it was the number 1 film internationally at $36.5 million. So it wasn't just here in the United States. China kind of has their own version of Obsession going on with the movie Dear You. It dropped just 29.4% to bring in another $27.9 million. That's good for second highest gross internationally. Star Wars The Mandalorian and Grogu fell 55.9% to number 3 internationally with $27.8 million. Then Michael, still hanging around really well. It dropped 29.3% for a $20.1 million weekend. And look at this, Obsession also growing in business around the world. I believe it opened in some new markets. It also has the word of mouth thing going on in the markets where it has been open. It had a 55.5% increase in business internationally to bring in $13.8 million. That's pretty crazy. When you take those international numbers, you combine them with our domestic numbers, we get the top 10 movies worldwide. And the number 1 movie was, no surprise here, Backrooms, which opened to $118 million. That's about, 12 times its budget in 3 days as far as the worldwide box office goes. Pretty impressive. The Mandalorian and Grogu, the number 2 movie in the world, with an overall 63.3% worldwide drop and a $52.8 million weekend. It is approaching the $250 million worldwide mark. Obsession overall with a 22.6% global increase and a $40.2 million weekend for a $148 million global total, again, made for around $1 million. Nutso. Michael brought in $31.8 million. Its global total is now approaching $850 million. Dear You, number 5 globally at $27.9 million. The Devil Wears Prada 2 dropped 43.4%, brought in $19.2 million, and has a global gross approaching $650 million. I felt like a real dummy because I just found out this week that Stanley Tucci is Emily Blunt's brother-in-law. He's married to her sister. I had no idea. The South Korean film Colony dropped just 2.7% to bring in $11.9 million. It's now at $26 million globally. The Sheep Detectives dropped 35% to bring in $9.4 million worldwide. It's now over $100 million globally. And then we have 2 movies that got in just based off of their domestic gross: The Breadwinner at number 9 and Pressure at number 10. Backrooms also put up one of the best worldwide opening weekends of the year. It was the 7th best opening of the year at $118 million. That comes in behind Project Hail Mary, which opened to $140.9 million. Scream 7 is at number 8, Hoppers is at number 9, and Wuthering Heights is at number 10. And for these next few charts, we're going to play a game called What is Chiwetel Ejiofor looking at? So right now, it looks to me like he is looking up in awe at the majesty of astronaut Ryan Gosling. As far as overall worldwide weekends for the year, Backrooms put up the 10th best weekend of any movie in 2026. And on this chart, it looks like Chiwetel Ejiofor is looking up in awe at Michael Jackson. Maybe he's in the crowd at Michael's concert, like he's just below the stage. Backrooms also put up one of the 10 best openings of all time for a horror movie worldwide, coming in at number 8, just behind Five Nights at Freddy's, The Nun, The Meg, The Mummy, 2017's The Mummy, It Chapter 2, the original It, and then The Conjuring Last Rites, which had a huge debut last year. And on this chart, it looks to me like Chiwetel Ejiofor is just afraid of entering Five Nights at Freddy's. Like maybe he's been there, he's had the flashlight, he's like, nah, I'm not doing that. No, not for me. And I mentioned that Backrooms is already the second highest grossing film of all time for A24 domestically. It's also already their fifth highest grossing movie ever worldwide. It's the sixth ever movie from A24 to pass $100 million, and it's only about $8 million behind the drama for number 4. It's going to move up this list quickly. It's going to be their highest grossing film, both domestically and worldwide. And on this chart, it looks to me like Chiwetel Ejiofor is like the heartbroken ex at Zendaya's wedding. Like he wants to object, but he's not objecting. So he's just like very sadly watching her get married to Robert Pattinson. It's sort of, this is like a Rorschach test. Hopefully we get to keep doing this because this is fun for me. So that's what's going on at the worldwide box office. Let's take a look at the summer box office, and it's already proving to be a really fun, difficult to predict summer at the box office. The number one movie is The Devil Wears Prada 2 at $209.3 million. The Mandalorian and Grogu is at number 2 at $137.3 million. Obsession becomes the third movie of the summer to pass $100 million domestically. Who had that on their bingo card? Like, I'll cop to missing Backrooms for generational reasons, but nobody predicted Obsession to do what it's going to be doing. It's number 3 for the summer. Backrooms enters the chart at number 4 for the summer. Mortal Kombat down 2 spots to number 5. The Sheep Detectives, Hokum, Passenger, and Billie Eilish Hit Me Hard and Soft all down 1 spot. And The Breadwinner entering the chart at number 10. We should see Masters of the Universe and Scary Movie on this chart next week. And just as a reminder, these were my predictions for the summer box office versus the actual summer box office. I mean, I'm not going perfect because there's no way that all of my movies are going to beat Obsession. So at best, I'm going 9 out of 10. I picked Devil Wears Prada 2 and Mandalorian and Grogu to be the 6th and 7th highest grossing movies of the summer. Right now, they're at number 1 and 2, but we're getting into the teeth of the summer. I did pick Scary Movie on my top 10 list. I predicted it would be the 9th highest grossing movie of the summer. It opens this weekend. I did not put Masters of the Universe on my list. We'll see if that was a good call or a bad call. Let's take a look now at what I call some of our specialty charts for the past weekend, and we'll look at the top per theater averages. As of right now, unless there's an indie that comes in and snakes the number 1 spot, Backrooms had the best per theater average of the weekend, bringing in $23,665 per theater in each of its 3,442 theaters. That's a lot of young and hopefully hungry moviegoers for movie theater managers to manage. The new John Carney film, Power Ballad, opened in 10 theaters and brought in $17,000 ahead of its wider release this upcoming Friday. I don't think it's going to go in every market around the country, but it's going much wider. But still, good to see the movie doing well, and I hope that it opens near me because I love John Carney's movies, especially Sing Street. Obsession comes in third place, bringing in almost $9,500 per theater in each of its 2,781 theaters. It also added theaters in its third weekend. So movie theater owners saying, yes, please, we need to get this in more theaters because they're all selling out. That's a great sign. In fourth place is a documentary called Time and Water, which brought in $8,625 in one theater. This is from the director of Fire of Love, which is a documentary I loved. I actually saw Time and Water at Sundance. It is a beautiful film. It didn't quite grab me the same way that Fire of Love did, but an absolutely gorgeous film. I mean, these are like the Terrence Malick of nature documentaries. So it did pretty well in one theater. And at number 5, also in one theater, is The Currents, which brought in $8,509. The Currents is a Swiss-Argentinian co-production that I believe played at Toronto last year and is now getting at least a nominal release here in the United States. These are the top films in limited release, which I define as fewer than 1,000 theaters. At number 1 was Tuner, which expanded to 452 theaters and brought in $1.7 million. Then we had the live presentation from the Met Opera, El Último Sueño de Frida y Diego, which brought in $776,000. At number 3 is the Indian film Chardi Kala in an unknown number of theaters, which brought in $240,000. This is a Punjabi language biopic, opening strategically around the country, as we often see with films from India. Power Ballad comes in at number 4 with $170,000 total across its 10 theaters. And then we have Drishyam 3 in an unknown number of theaters, bringing in $124,000. This is what the 2026 domestic box office looks like for the year. The Super Mario Galaxy movie at number 1, Project Hail Mary at number 2, Michael at number 3, The Devil Wears Prada at number 4, and Hoppers at number 5. But the summer movies are looking to shake this up. Mandalorian and Grogu is up 2 spots to number 6 at $137.3 million. Scream 7 down 1 spot to number 7. Obsession hits the top 10 for the year so far domestically at number 8, and it's looking to move up rapidly. Goat down down 2 spots to number 9, Wuthering Heights down 1 spot to number 10, and Mortal Kombat 2 now off the list after a few weeks. Backrooms is going to be on this list. It's just barely outside of the top 10. So it's going to be there at number 10, number 9, number 8 on next week's show. And this is what the worldwide box office looks like. The Super Mario Galaxy movie is absolutely turtle crawling to $1 billion. It's at $991.8 million. It's going to get there, but it has not been the charge through $1 billion that we saw with the first film. Michael is in second place at about $850 million. It's trying to play the long game to get to $1 billion. Project Hail Mary right now at number 3. The Devil Wears Prada 2, though, is moving up quickly. It is appropriately at number 4 with $666 million, appropriate for The Devil Wears Prada 2, and it should be passing Project Hail Mary soon. Pegasus 3 from China down to number 5. Hoppers is at number 6. The Mandalorian and Grogu at close to $250 million globally enters the chart at number 7. Wuthering Heights, Blades of the Guardians, and Scream 7 all take a spot down, and Scare Out from China is out of the worldwide top 10. So we are now at the end of May and the beginning of June, which means it is time for our monthly check-in as far as the cumulative box office domestically for 2026, as well as which studios have the biggest market share for the year so far. Let's look first of all at the cumulative box office for the year. And even though we had some weekends that were below what we had in 2025, we actually had a very, very good May at the box office. Right now, the 2026 box office is at $3.61 billion. That's up almost $350 million from where we were this time last year. And that's an increase of about $90 million from the lead that we had in April. So we picked up some ground in May, and I think that we're very likely going to pick up a lot more ground in June. This was actually the first billion-dollar grossing May since 2019. It's the first time since COVID that the May box office has crossed $1 billion domestically, which is another great sign for box office recovery. Of course, as you can see from the pre-2020 numbers, we are still not really close to where we were pre-pandemic. We're about $900 million behind where we were at this point in 2019, but we're at the best point through the end of May that we've been since 2020. So that's great news, and hopefully we can keep that momentum going. These are the studios that have the biggest market share. This is all tickets sold since January 1st, and I actually went ahead and added A24 as its own studio on this chart because I figured if you have a top 10 grossing summer movie potentially, you probably deserve to have your own spot as far as studio market share. It's a close race for number 1 right now. Universal has the biggest market share at 17.9%. Disney is at 17.6%, but they've got Toy Story 5 coming up in June, and I think it's very likely they're going to retake that lead. But those two studios have been jockeying for position basically the entire year. Even though I pulled A24 out of the All Other Studios tab, it still has the third biggest market share out of everything else in Hollywood at 16.9%. So those are your Neons, your independents, your unaffiliated, your smaller studios and distributors. Still number 3, Amazon MGM at number 4 with 13%. That's the power of Project Hail Mary. Lionsgate, that's the power of Michael at 12.4%. And look at this, A24 on its own has 6.1% market share for the year so far. That's more than Paramount, that's more than Warner Brothers, that's more than Sony. So right now, indie distributor A24 has a bigger market share than 3 of the major Hollywood studios. Now, that's not going to last because all 3 of those studios are going to be picking up the pace as we get more into the summer season, but that is impressive. A24 beating 3 major studios, 2 of which are now trying to become a super major studio. What an interesting year at the box office it's been so far. So those are the box office numbers I have for you. Let's take a look now at the world of streaming. We'll start with the latest numbers I have from Netflix. New ones will be out on Tuesday, but these cover the week of May 18th through the 24th, when the number 1 most watched program on Netflix was the true crime documentary The Crash at 27.6 million views. That's a substantial increase from its first few days on the streaming service. Netflix's animated film Swapped, which has turned into a bit of a slow-release sleeper hit, brought in 16.12 million views in second place. Then we have the Netflix original movie Ladies First at 11.94 million views. The Netflix series Nemesis comes in fourth place, followed by Berlin and The Lady with an Ermine, which is a Spanish heist series. That brought in 10.31 million views. Then we have this year's the movie Goat at 10.14 million views. Remarkably Bright Creature stays in the top 10 at 8.21 million views. The Wonder Fools is at number 8. This is a series from South Korea about a group of young people who get superpowers. That brought in just under 8 million views. The Netflix original movie Apex is at number 9 at 6.69 million views. And at number 10 is the new original series The Burrows with 5.65 million views. The Burrows is about a series of strange occurrences in a retirement community and co-stars Alfred Molina, Alfre Woodard, Gina Davis, and many more people. Pretty talented cast attached to that film. These are the most watched Netflix programs in 2026. Swapped is now into the top 5 and is looking to join the 100 million view club. It's right behind K-pop Demon Hunters right now at 96.71 million total views. Bridgerton Season 4, His and Hers, and Thrash all moved down the top 10, which is rounded out by People We Meet on Vacation and Peaky Blinders, The Immortal Man. War Machine, still the most viewed program on Netflix according to the numbers that we have at 128.41 million views. Let's turn now to the latest numbers from Nielsen. Now, these are domestic numbers, not global numbers like the Netflix ones we just saw, and they're delayed by about a month because Nielsen likes to take their time. So this is for the week of April 27th through May 3rd. So coming into the beginning of May, let's look at the most watched streaming movies first, and Apex leads the way with 11.6 million hours watched, followed by the debut of Swapped with 8.3 million hours watched. It'll be interesting to see if it picks up hours in its second week domestically like we saw worldwide. The Devil Wears Prada moves up to number 3, so again, as the new movie was about to hit theaters, a lot of people going back to watch the original. Zootopia 2 sticking around in the top 5 on Disney Plus with 3.36 million hours watched. Green Book, why not? It's at number 5 at 2.93 million hours watched. It must have gotten added to Netflix. I can think of no other reason why it would be in the top 5. K-pop Demon Hunters, it's just set up camp in the top 10. It's hanging around. At number 7 is the Amazon original comedy Balls Up with 2.5 million hours watched. Then we have Begonia, which made its way over to Netflix at number 8. Crime 101 on Amazon Prime Video at number 9. And Despicable Me 4 at number 10. These were the most watched streaming shows for the same week, April 27th through May 3rd. The Boys takes the number 1 spot as the Pitt viewers finished out watching the second season, so it's back at number 1. Running Point on Netflix is at number 2. La Brea, which is a recent TV show that gets put on streaming, returns to the top 10 at number 3 at 14.68 million hours watched. Bluey's at number 4. The new Netflix original series Man on Fire debuts at number 5, followed by Family Guy, The Big Bang Theory, Grey's Anatomy, SpongeBob SquarePants, and Criminal Minds, all very familiar names on this chart. And these are the top shows as far as watch time per available episode. So take the number of hours watched, divide it by the number of episodes you can watch. That's how you get this number. The Netflix docuseries Should I Marry a Murderer comes in at number 1 with 2.97 million hours per episode. Netflix viewers love true crime because we often see them at the top of these charts. Man on Fire comes in second place at 1.92 million hours per episode. Then we have Hulk Hogan Real American at number 3 with 1.57 million hours per episode. Unchosen at number 4 with just over a million. Miss Rachel rounds out the top 5. Then we have Running Point. Euphoria, which just wrapped up its series. It was announced that this season finale was actually a series finale at number 7. La Brea is at number 8. The Boys is at number 9. And $1 Million Secret rounds out the top 10. And those are all the numbers I have for you this week. Before we go, though, I just wanted to draw your attention to a few things you might enjoy watching, both at home and in theaters. First of all, tomorrow, Hokum, if you didn't catch it in theaters, will be available for digital purchase and also premium video on demand. Those are those higher-priced 48-hour rentals. On Wednesday, Hoppers will be hitting Disney+. I think we're going to see a lot of streaming viewership for that movie when we look at the Nielsen charts in about a month. On Thursday, another theatrical event that I'm told should really be a hit with young audiences. I looked at the screenings around my town. They're all sold out. The Amazing Digital Circus, The Last Act, will be showing in theaters starting on Thursday. This is a series that really gained popularity in YouTube and especially among younger viewers. I think even skewing closer to your Gen Alphas. And like I said, almost every screening near me is completely sold out. I did get a ticket. I'm not sure if I'm going to go yet. I kind of started watching the show. I'm going to watch a little bit more. If not, I'm going to give up my seat to a kid who might want to. I don't know if I want to just take some kid's seat. So stay tuned. I might check it out. I might not. But again, another box office surprise from the younger generation coming up this week. Then on Friday, as I mentioned, we have Masters of the Universe, which is hitting theaters everywhere around the country, including IMAX. Originally, Mandalorian and Grogu was IMAX exclusive, but now Masters of the Universe is also getting some IMAX screenings. My review will be out tomorrow morning. Scary Movie hits theaters around the country on Friday. There are no advanced screenings near me, so I'm going to check that out on Thursday afternoon and have my review out probably on Friday morning. There's a new Netflix original movie hitting on Friday. It's called Office Romance. Jennifer Lopez plays a CEO who falls for a corporate attorney hired to assist her company, played by Brett Goldstein, who also co-wrote the film. And there's a new show debuting on Apple TV on Friday called Cape Fear. Javier Bardem takes on the role of Max Cady, which was previously just absolutely crushed by Robert De Niro and Robert Mitchum, in this 10-episode series retelling of the famous story that finds him menacing Amy Adams and Patrick Wilson. That's a pretty prestige cast. And finally on Friday, Pillion hits HBO Max. This never played near me, so I am actually looking forward to watching it at home because it's the first time I'll get a chance to see the movie. On Sunday, if you're a Broadway fan, the Tony Awards, the best and brightest in Broadway, will be on CBS. And also premiering on Sunday is The Vampire Lestat, which, as I understand, is really the third season of Interview with the Vampire, but because of the narrative, it's gone from Interview with the Vampire now to The Vampire Lestat. I've heard good things about that show, and it will be premiering on AMC this Sunday. And that's everything I've got for you this week. We had a lot to talk about. Be sure to stay tuned here on the channel because it's going to be a busy week. As I mentioned, Masters of the Universe review, Scary Movie review. I'm working on some other projects. I got my live show on Wednesday. I'm working on a review of something that I've never actually reviewed before here on the channel. I think that might be kind of interesting. So lots of stuff going on. It's a busy summer movie season, and that means it's a busy season here on the channel. If you're not subscribed, please hit that subscribe button. Hit the bell so you know when I upload a new video. And if you have a friend that's a box office nerd that doesn't know about the show, maybe point them our way because I'm always talking about weird stuff here on the channel. But most of all, thank you for watching this episode. Until next time, stay safe, and I'll see you then. Bye.